Welcome to a flash podcast of the Dark Zone Adventure Racing Podcast. This is your host, Brian Gatens. We jump right into it with Paul McGreal. He's in Scotland. We're in New Jersey. 5-hour time difference. Our 7:30 p.m., his 12:30 a.m. And he was kind enough to make time for us to talk about where the race is right now. Paul talks about the pointy end of the race, who's in the lead. He talks about the challenges of logistics with having 5 TAs open. He tells a story or two about some teams we see and the challenges so far. ITERA, an iconic race, is living up to its legendary status. And thank you for being here for this Flash podcast. So that's it. No ads, no music, no awesome quotes. We get right into it. So sit back and relax and enjoy this episode of The Dark Zone. And remember, if you keep racing, we'll keep talking. All right, folks, we're settling in for a Flash podcast direct from ITERA. We have Paul McGreal, race director. He is. It's now 12:38 in the morning. It's Wednesday morning in Scotland. Race directors, they turn their watches off when the race stops, and they turn it back on 121 hours later. But Paul is kind enough to join the Dark Zone all the way from Scotland to talk about the race they're having there. Great images are coming out of Scotland, of ITERA, and all the races. And so, Paul, welcome to the Dark Zone. Frequent guest, great to have you back. Talk to us a bit about the pointy end of the race. Give us an update how the races are doing.
So we've got a pretty competitive race, certainly the front two. So that's Leaping Fish and Endurance Life are pretty close. You know, we're well into the kind of the thick of the race now, you know, approaching the back end even. And those guys are still only an hour or two separated. Their leaders changed hands a couple of times. Endurance Life kind of lost pole position during what was a really tough paddle down Loch Ness yesterday. Heavy headwind. Leaping Fish managed to kind of get that done a bit quicker and pull out a 1 hour lead, which they kind of held on to ever since. But what's coming up could all change that. You know, we know how adventure racing works. It's not over till it's over. Behind them, there's a bunch of other teams. There's a bit of a gap, but Rachel's Irish Adventures are sat there comfortably in third and have been there for a while now. Nav4 Orange is sat there somewhere in the top 4 or 5. We've got there's a kind of a race for those first two positions, I think, and I think third is still live as well. The race for third.
Yeah, and it looks like, from the way I look at it now, so we're showing Leaping Fish, Endurance Life, Rachel's Irish Adventures, Dutch Direction, and Nav4 Orange, your top 5. And it sounds like 1, 2, and to your point, there's a lot of racing left. There's a tricky orienteering section coming up. Like it's you know, when you're awake for days as race media and race director and as racers, you begin to lose context of space and time. They have a lot on the race course ahead of them, so it very well could stay year 1, 2 stays the same, but a mechanical, God forbid, a medical, a nav bobble, like this is far from set. It sounds like when we were chatting before that they're making pretty good speed of the course. They're ahead of your time estimates.
They are ahead of our time estimates by a fair chunk, and some of that is to do with that kind of you might have spotted that we cut a little bit of the course in the first big track stage, stage 3. Because of the weather, basically, it was really windy up on the ridges, and we had to cut a couple of controls. That has reduced the length of the course by a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours. They then got lucky. Those same winds that had caused problems then were lucky. Teams got lucky because the next stage, a mountain bike, was pretty much across the country in the direction of the wind. So they got a tailwind for hours, and we think that's probably kind of pulled back another bit. But you can't get away from the fact that they are moving quickly. Right. We kind of know how fast teams move. We've got this kind of down to a slightly fine art, but these guys are beating our estimates. They're moving quickly.
Yeah, you could tell that, and you could from the race media that you're seeing in Facebook and Instagram, those teams, all 5 of them, they're dialed in. Like, they're making fast use of the TAs. Their boxes are set up. They're building and they're going. You may not know the answer to this question because you're so busy tracking the breadth of the race. Sleep strategy. Does any one team have a sleep advantage over another team?
Yeah, I would say actually Leaping Fish are ahead on that as well. They had something like an hour or an hour and a half last night in around TA7. They were just outside TA7. We spotted them in a building. So they slept last night. Whereas we think Endurance Life probably only got 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes last night. And so are kind of slightly behind on that score. They're going to have to stop. I don't think they'll get through all the way to the finish from this point with no further sleep. So we are expecting, we're expecting both of them to do kind of, relatively short pit stops overnight tonight at some point. I kind of wonder whether they'll do that. You mentioned it a second ago. From where I'm sat right now, I'm sat in TA12. And what follows from here, first teams haven't arrived here yet, but they're not far away. What follows from here is a pretty spectacular orienteering stage. Pretty much all of stage 13 is on orienteering maps. The first one is a place called Lossy Forest, and it's not far away from here, so they're straight into it. That map is over 1 meter wide. It's enormous. It's the biggest orienteering map. 1 to 10,000. Biggest orienteering map I've ever seen. It is huge, and it's forested sand dunes. In the dark, even for a really good navigator, and both those teams have excellent navigators, even for really good navigators, that's going to be a pretty stiff challenge. I think there's absolutely the potential for this to change hands again on that stage.
And so clearly you have that breakdown there in the 5 teams that are coming in that way, and the sleep strategy. And we all know that in adventure racing, especially of the expedition type, there's the pointy end of the race, and then there's a million stories behind it. Right. There's teams that are out there slugging away. So you have the pointy end and you have the teams that are making up the mid pack and the back of the pack. Tell us a bit about, and they're not even ranked. Tell us a bit about Strong Machine and their adventure so far.
So I've only bumped into them briefly, but I mean, from what I've been told and what I saw kind of on the tracker dots, they kind of started the race. I think it was Glenn started the race, not well. I think he said that he was kind of 20%, starting the race. So I think a couple of the other team, as far as I can tell, or thought of from what I've seen and heard, a couple of the other team had some kind of, some kind of illness that had kind of done the rounds. And I guess Glenn found that he got that just before the race. Mm-hmm. They started anyway. They're here anyway. Of course they're going to. Give it a shot. You might recover quickly. It'll be okay. He kind of didn't. So from what he told me earlier on, he felt kind of really weak coming off that first paddle and kind of had to be helped onto the shore. They went out on the trek and pulled him through it, but it sounded like it was pretty grim at times for everybody in the team, I'm sure. You know how it works with the shared load. And at the end of that stage, shortly after setting off on the bikes on the stage that followed, I could see the tracker dot. They were holed up in a hotel, or sorry, not actually in a hotel. They were hauled up in a storage kind of barn or shed or something next to a hotel, place called Ledgowan. And I watched their dots stop there, and something's going on here. What's happening here? This is way too early in the race, but this could be happening. So that, from that position, a couple of hours sleep didn't make a difference, it seems. So they decided to scratch kind of the following morning, got themselves back to Race HQ. Brilliantly, they have gone back out on the course, including Glenn. So that's a hell of an effort. What a story.
Right, and that speaks to the spirit of adventure racing, right? The fact that they traveled all that way, did all that distance, they gave it a valiant start, didn't work out, but they're making the best they can of it, right? They saw the situation, they're adjusting. And I have to tell you that the American race scene, and we're following the race closely. We have Rib Mountain over there, we have a couple of teams in ITERA-Lite, and then we have obviously Strong Machine out there. That the American tech streams were flying this morning when their dot came back alive on the course. So kudos to Strong Machine for getting back out there and doing their best.
And they seem to be having fun. I bumped into them maybe 5 or 6 hours ago, and they were having fun.
Wonderful. What else are you seeing here? I noticed yesterday that a lot of teams, they came very, very cold off Loch Ness. It was rather bitter. They had to warm up, and then they had to go into foyers, which was the rope and the drop into the water. What was that like for teams?
I think that was pretty challenging, So there were a few. They came off the water cold. There were a couple of teams there that kind of elected not. There was 1 or 2 folks that elected not to go and do the canyon because they were kind of cold. But in every case, I think every team, all the other team members went up and did it. It was one of those things that was a bit of a unique experience. And I know adventure racing is a collection, it's a series of unique experiences. That is the sport. It's an amazing sport. But this thing was special. This was huge. So they walked up to the top of this canyon, and to kind of access the canyon, you may have seen the video. Adam Rose posted a fab video. I think it's up on ARWS of kind of how this thing works. Just to access the canyon was this zip line,
right,
but it kind of stopped in the middle of the splash pool, and people had to kind of basically fall off the rope themselves.
Well, you had to pull the rope, right? The rope was tied in such a way that when you were hanging over the water, you had to release the rope and drop how many meters into the water. It's a pretty unique experience.
Yeah, well, it was particularly for Nick Gracie, because we watched him go down the rope, and we asked the kind of the rope operator on that, because we had the control of where they stopped was up to the guy at the top. So we made sure that Nick got a pretty good fall.
Right, he got the biggest fall. He deserves it. Good for Nick Gracie. He's getting his money's worth out of the race.
Oh, for sure. But so that was, it was a pretty impressive kind of thing. And that canyon, as I say, go and have a look at the Adam Rose video. It's brilliant. But that was daylight. Imagine doing that in the dark. Imagine dropping into that splash pool with no illumination. That canyon is dark.
Yeah, dark, and it's deep, and it's wet, and it's cold, and you got to eat your way out of it. And this is after being cold on Loch Ness.
Yeah.
Right? So they warm up and then they get cold again, and it seems to me, and this is it's Scotland, right? It appears that the weather is always the unpredictable adversary, right? And it sounds like this has really tested teams in their mettle in terms of trying to stay warm in these conditions.
Oh, for sure. But there's been a complete change. So Sunday night here, which is when the stage when the windy stage up on that first big trek, and then into the following mountain bike, and then into Loch Ness paddle, was wet and wild and windy. The sun came out yesterday. After all of that, the sun came out, and it's been what in Scotland passes for hot today. It's a total transformation. However, there's some really heavy rain in the forecast for tomorrow afternoon in certain locations. So it'd be interesting to see if that transpires. It's hot and wet tomorrow. Strange. It's Scotland. We do 4 seasons in a day better than anybody else.
Right. How have the midges been? I have to ask about the midges.
Oh, brutal. TA3. Oh, wow. I know they've got international fame, these things, but gee whiz, this was next level stuff.
Okay.
Even the hardy Scots were wearing the midge nets and all the rest of it. So no, it was pretty bad. Kinloch U on whenever that was, Sunday night was that, I think, was bad.
When we had that when we were there back in 2019, there was no inside, there was no outside. The doors were open so often that there was many midges inside the hall as there were outside the hall. And they were there were bugs nests inside, which of course you laugh about the midges. We talk about it only makes ITERA more and more appealing to those who haven't done it, right? We talk about these things like they're Godzilla flying around ready to kill us.
There was a story from that year, Brian, that the supermarket at that transition area had those sensors. So it had the sliding doors, the sensors that detect a human arriving and open the door automatically. They were going off constantly because the midges were swarming so badly. And of course, each time those doors opened, they sucked a fresh load into the shop. Oh, it was horrible.
And you too can have a great vacation in Scotland.
Yes, come to Scotland. It's brilliant.
So now you have a really cool media story going on right now. You have opposing media teams from Wales and from Scotland on the course?
That's right. Yeah, this is kind of a race within a race. I'm sure you've seen the film Anchorman, and this kind of reminds me of all that, of the fight sequences in that, which I find very, very funny. So we are incredibly lucky to have coverage from not one but 2 national broadcasters. So BBC Scotland and their kind of Gaelic channel, BBC Alaba, are here, and they're filming the race, and I think are doing 2 on-air broadcasts a couple of weeks after the race, which hopefully folks will be able to see. And they're doing some daily edits as well. that are appearing on YouTube. So they have a team in the race. So they have a Gaelic-speaking team in the race. They are the Blustering Gaels, who, as we speak right now, I believe are still long course, which is an amazing effort.
Yep.
They're fantastic. Individually, they're brilliant athletes. But the big question was, can they hold it together? And the answer would appear to be, yes, they can. But then S4C, who are the Welsh language, effectively state broadcaster, also have a team of their presenters in the race, and they're still on course. They're short course now, but they're still going strong. So we've got these two teams, these two media teams, one Welsh speaking, one Gaelic speaking. So I think there was a sequence, or I saw out of the corner of my eye a day or two ago, they were filming a sequence where, I think that they were kind of doing trash talk to each other in one in Gaelic, one in Welsh. So, I mean, who knows whether that'll make good telly or not, but we'll find out.
That's great. It's a great, the idea of the race inside the race, and then the fact that there's this coverage that the race is getting, because it's become such an iconic race in the ARWS series, and people, it's a destination race. A lot of people have been reaching out and talking to me about how this is on their list, that ITERA has always kind of lived in their world. And so it's good to see you have the pointy end, you have the stories from behind, you have stories like Strong Machine. What else has jumped out at you? I know as a race director, it's hard to remember anything specific because you have the entire race in your head. But what else do you want to share about it?
There was a lovely little moment earlier on today. So a fantastic moment. So there's a team from the RAF here, and there is a father and son in that team, which is kind of cool in itself. However, today is the day that the son is 18 years old. He's a very young racer, which is an amazing story in itself. However, today is the day that his kind of final school exam results are published. Today it happened today while he's racing. So he came to me in a transition this morning and said, "Look, I know this is against the rules, but maybe this is exceptional. Could my son log into his school so he can see what his exam results were today?" And it was just a cool thing. So we've got a photograph of that as well. It's just like, what a great little story. What a lovely little story. Here's this guy racing, and now he's found out whether he's going to, I don't know, I mean, I have no idea. Maybe he's going to university or whatever he's going to do next. Pretty important stuff.
But that's great that you created that opportunity for him. That would be Jamie and Joshua Buckle. If the website is telling me the truth,
correct.
That's who we're talking about here.
This is Josh. Yeah, Jamie is dad, Josh is son. That's
great. And they're sharing that. And his A-level results came out, I'm guessing, and he had to find out where he was going to go, what's he going to do, and he got back on the course. So good for him. What else have you seen on the course in terms of the in your take, the mid-pack teams? How are they managing the course? Are they overwhelmed by it? Is it what they expected it to be? Is it a typical ITERA experience?
It's actually I'm not sure that it is. I mean, one of the things that Tom is the course planner. So one of the things that Tom and I have aimed for this year is something that has a huge amount of variety, and also will allow us. There's always a really interesting balance of risk when you're a race director. We don't want to remove risk. We're not interested in doing that because a little bit of risk is a good thing. Mm-hmm. But with pairs, as we have in the ITERA-Lite category, I kind of have to be a little bit more careful because there aren't as many people there physically to sort stuff out should anything happen. Right. So the way that we've ended up designing this course is the second half. I'm not going to go with easier. It's got loads of character, but it has less elevation, less exposure, all those kinds of things that perhaps people will be used to. So the race, we've done the tough stuff. We've done the really tough stuff early doors. And then it's kind of, the race is changing character. It's becoming a little bit mellower, the course. And that will, I think teams are going to really enjoy it. Sometimes what it's like at the back end of a race. Are you really enjoying it, or are you just aiming at the finish? I hope that the second half of this course is interesting enough without being ridiculously physical that all those teams are going to really, really enjoy it all the way to the finish line.
That's always the balance, right? I mean, as a race director, you have to consider the fact that it's 5 days worth of racing, right? So teams, when they're getting to a section of the course, how hard is it in the end? How hard is it in the beginning? Things like that. And so to your point, what you're hoping for is having muscled through those really, really hard seconds in the beginning, the cold, going down the lock, foyer, climbing up to the wind farm and getting into TA7, you now go out and you now do this counterclockwise lollipop around the northern part of the country. You want teams to enjoy that experience, to be appropriately challenged by it, but not be so clobbered that like they're falling to pieces.
Yeah, and I know we kind of sometimes we kind of talk all macho about these things, but we're not in the business of breaking people. We're in the business of giving people a really good time, showing them some really cool stuff. Taking them to places, setting them some challenges. Physical and mental. But we're not into breaking people, and we try and be conscious of that. That we want some tough stuff. Of course, you want to go up hills and mountains and crazy stuff, but some beautiful stuff as well, and some mellow and fun, and although so we've tried to provide all of that really this time around. And I'm happy with the course. I think it's really good. I think Tom's done a great job.
Yeah, and the shout out to the media team coming out and all the work that you're putting out in the video and photographers. There's a very nice, for those who are interested in following along on Instagram and on Facebook with Sleep Monsters and ARWS, you really get that understanding. Of course, we did our 2 course reveal podcasts. Plus, we have all the other resources out there. There's a lot there for the dot watcher at home to follow on. So kudos to you for putting all of that together. I do know that it's getting towards 1:00 in the morning for you, and you have teams to go check on. So I don't want to keep you too much longer. But going into what is for you now the back half of your race, right? You have teams that are out there and to get everybody home. How are you feeling now about this long course? ITERA-Lite's on the course now. Are you even introspective now, or is it just about get yourself to the finish line and see what happens then?
Oh, definitely the latter of those 2 things. This is still, this is detail, and this is all, race direct ahead is very much still on at this point. We've still got a day at least of racing for the front of the pack. The back of the pack could have 2 to 3 days of racing yet. So we're still churning the logistics. We're still making sure the stuff's in the right place at the right time. We're still keeping an eye on event control and keeping an eye on all those teams, and, making decisions about the course and moving. So we're still kind of absolutely focused on the detail, the minutiae. No chance to really enjoy it yet. That will come later, I'm sure. Right now, it's kind of it's business. It's kind of business as usual. Right. That sounds awful. It's not like business as usual. We're doing something amazing. It's not that at all. But we're kind of we're on the detail of spreadsheets and tracker dots and all the stuff that that's kind of what we do during race week.
Right. And you live in the moment, right? You watch your trackers, you keep an eye on the teams, you take care of those having a rough time, you keep your TAs open, and you get everybody flowing forward, and eventually everybody gets across to the finish line. But it's weird for you because you have fast teams in the front that are pushing at the very outer edges of the course, and you have teams that are a day and a half behind who are still making their way through. So you have to accommodate for all of that, which it's always a challenge for any race organization.
Yeah, it gets really hard at this stage of the race because we're quite stretched now. We've got, right now, how many TAs are now open? 9, 10, 11, and 12, and 13 is staffed. So we've now got kind of 5. Is that 9, 10, 11? Yeah. I can't count anymore.
Yeah, you're fine. You're good. Yeah,
9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We've got 5 transitions open right now. Right. And you get to the point, it's kind of, it's easy. Logistics are easier at the beginning part of the race because you fill a van full of boxes or bags and you move it to a transition and, job done, happy days. When we get to this stage of the race, what's happening is that the thing is so spread out that we're having to do almost private shuttles of bags and boxes. The way that we approach that changes. So there's almost now a van or a couple of vans that are dedicated to the front few teams. Because we need to moving their stuff up the course in such a different way to everybody else that there's almost like a weird kind of private chauffeur service going on. Meanwhile, in the back, in the middle of the pack, we've, that's where the bulk is, particularly because ITERA-Lite is now mixed in there as well. Right. So the bell curve of busyness in transition areas right now is very, very steep. And then, of course, you get the tail enders, and we need to shut transitions down. We need to move bags and boxes up the course, right? Because we need to those vehicles need to be elsewhere, and our transition teams, our crew need to be elsewhere to get other venues open. And it becomes quite challenging at this point in the race because we're spread over, a couple of 100 kilometers, 5 transitions. And yeah, we're hanging on.
Yeah.
We're hanging on.
That's fascinating. Like I've said before, I'll say it again. If you really want to capture a documentary on adventure racing, you don't follow the racers, you follow the race staff. And you see what they do and the decisions they make and things like that. That's where the fascinating stories are. Racers are doing a great job, but all of the behind the scenes logistics are just fascinating to watch.
I think it would be. I think someone should. I think it'd be someone brave should perhaps make that race film. I think it would be interesting.
There's our $1 billion idea, Paul. You're not going to retire.
Yeah, many racers are kind of unaware of that. The van turns up, the bags turn up, and it's brilliant. Isn't that great? And are kind of unaware of the splashing that's going on beneath the water.
Well, Paul, I will let you go. You have teams to watch. Hopefully you get some sleep for yourself. Take care of yourself now. We have to keep the race directors healthy. Thanks for being on the Dark Zone for the Flesh podcast. Good luck with the race, and we'll talk again. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, folks, there you have it. The Flash episode with Paul McGreal of ITERA. If you head over to our show notes, we put the tracking link in there, as well as the links to the Course Reveal podcasts, part 1 and part 2, that we did earlier this week. Thanks again to Paul for coming on to the show. Thank you to all the volunteers, keeping those TAs open, keeping the race going. Volunteers are the lifeblood of adventure racing. So thanks for being here. If you like it, go back. We have 139 other episodes. Sit back and relax, enjoy those episodes, and thanks for being here. Be safe.